So my name is Gaurav, my colleague is Shantanu. So we're going to talk about keeping in suspension. So these are the topics we'll be covering, that is introduction and purpose, objectives, what is a beam bridge, methodology, results, what is a suspension bridge methodology, results, comparison, and all this. So introduction and purpose. So as I've already talked about we're doing the project of keeping in suspension. What I'm talking about is basically about different kinds of bridges, which are two bridges. One is the beam bridge and the suspension bridge. And all this linking all together, it's all coming into bridge engineering or even civil engineering. And if you can also see, as I've also said, civil or bridge engineering, this project involves building and testing two different types of bridges, as I talked about it. Next. Okay, so our objectives is basically that from this project, what we wanted to see by the end of the project is to see how much load can the bridge take, how much load can that particular bridge take that we're working on. So yeah, hold more weight before falling. So we are just testing the breaking point of that particular bridge that we developed. And that small experiment that we made is just so that we can see the reality of how the real bridges are built. Yeah, next. So now I'll talk about the beam bridge. So as you can see, this is a beam bridge and they don't have any cables or anything like this. It's just a flat bridge. But before I even talk about this beam bridge, I'll go a bit towards the history of bridges. So it was started in the Roman Empire where they used to make bridges using wood, like wooden blocks. And basically just to cross over from one city to another city because there was probably like a river canal in between, so they couldn't cross. So they usually used to cross using these wooden blocks. But now lately when advancements in technology and advancements in the world started happening, they brought about steel and concrete. So now what makes a beam bridge firm, or what makes a bridge actually firm, is the concrete blocks on the side and also the steel pillars. So actually a bridge is actually depending on the quality of steel that is used. That is what makes a bridge stronger actually, and the couple of supports that are there. So coming back to now beam bridge now. So a simple beam bridge is a type of bridge that consists of a horizontal beam that is supported at both the points. So if we look at this beam bridge, this image, these are all supports, these are all vertical supports. And then there's moving traffic on top over here. So literally, let's say like if there is heavy traffic passing on this bridge, it's like all the weight of that force or that object or that car, that vehicle, it's all being passed upon these weights or these supports. So there's vertical force downwards, and these supports are there to hold the weight of all that, hold the weight of that load. So basically the heavy traffic. So the weight of the bridge and any traffic or loads it carries are transferred to the supports through vertical forces called reactions. As I said, these are the vertical forces, and whatever force is passing down by the traffic or by the cars, the vehicles, is all known as the reaction forces that are acting downwards. So then simple bridges are one of the most common types of bridges. As you guys also know that, of course, where you've crossed across like so many bridges, whether it's in your hometown or whether it's here, UK, wherever it is. So mostly you've probably seen like in UK, I've seen like they are mostly like suspension bridges, most of them, which my colleague will talk about it in a while. But beam bridges, it's like just for a short span because beam bridges cannot really carry that much of a load because you can say there's not that much of a support. Like even if you see over here, there are so many risks of this. First of all, like it can just break anytime. I'm not saying it's not safe, but it can just break anytime because let's just say after like 10 years or 8 years, probably the concrete is fading off or like it's cracking or something due to erosion, corrosion, all this. But actually, what holds these concrete pillars are the steel tubes or steel pillars over here. So that's what is holding the beam bridge actually. Next slide please. So as now I'll talk about our experiment. This is how the experiment was looking for us. Before even I get into this, I'll talk about the apparatus of the books. That is, it's not a presentation. So as you can see, we used straws, we used paper clips. So this is a paper clip. We used aluminium wire as well, and then paper cups as well, and duct tape to seal the ends off. And then 2 tables or 2 chairs. In our case, we used 2 tables that are at equal length. So in our experiment now, we took 2 straws, we cut them and we took vertical straws. So the one that are flexible, sorry, not vertical, flexible straws, and they were flexible. So we had to cut off the flexible sides of the straws, and then take another straw and then tape it down here, cut it into like 3 centimeters short, and tape it down here. And then we raised up 2 straws, stuck it with duct tape, and then put another straw over here as a support, as a beam support. So basically, this is how the beam bridge is. And then this is the load tester. So basically, in this case, in a layman's language, I can explain this as like, this is our bridge. So there are cars passing here, but in this case, the car is this one. This is the truck, or this is the vehicle. So over here, this is the paper clip, and then we put also there's a paper clip we placed over here along the cup rim. And then in our experiment, because we do not have enough coins or enough pennies, we use paper clips for our experiment to actually get our values. So now coming back to this, 2 straws of the flexible pot cut were taped on either side of the table and used as supports, as I already said. So that is this part, and then the straw was used as a simple bridge connecting the 2 supports. This part, and then a paper cup was attached, as I said, and paper clips were used as weights to find out the failure point of our beam bridge. Next slide, please. So if you can see over here, this was our experiment what we have done, and let me also explain more to the experiment. So before that, I'll also just give a small story that this was actually astonishing for me because I am not from the engineering side, I'm from the computer side. So actually, like looking at this experiment, it was actually kind of fun doing this experiment. So yeah, and if you've seen like from our experiment, when we did the beam bridge, we were putting the paper clips one by one, and in our trial 1 we put 35 paper clips, and then that is where the bridge collapsed. So basically in the first trial, which we did, the first experiment of the beam bridge, we put 35 clips and then it started bending over in the center of the beam bridge. So that was the failure point. In the second trial, 40 clips, we added 40 clips and then it broke. Of course we used a new straw, that is we replaced that straw because it failed, and then we used a new straw. So 40 clips. Then the third trial again, now we use 45 clips, and the average of these 3 are 40 clips. 40 paper clips, and then each paper clip weighed around 3.5 grams. So I'll just show you guys a small video. So as you can see, while he's adding the paper clips, you can also see it bending. So that was the bending movement over there. That's the failing point over there. Yeah. So thank you. That is it from me. Now my colleague will take over.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shantanu, and as my colleague explained, our project is keeping you in suspension. And there are basically 2 main parts about this project. The first part is the beam bridge, which he explained, and the second part is the suspension bridge. So I'll be explaining the suspension bridge, and we'll be comparing the 2 of the bridges and seeing which one is better. So starting off with suspension bridge, as you can see behind me, this is what a suspension bridge looks like. This is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And as you can see right off the bat, there's a huge difference between a simple beam bridge and a suspension bridge. The first difference you may be able to see is that distance in between the supports. Supports are basically these towers, 2 towers you see, and the distance between them. As the distance between them is greater, the point of failure of a beam is generally in the middle. That's why these suspension cables are suspended alongside the beam to help it not fail. At any given point, there are 3 loads acting on a beam bridge or on this bridge. There's live load, there is dead load, and there is dynamic load. So dead load is pretty much the weight of the bridge itself under gravitational force. Live load is the traffic moving along it, and then comes the dynamic load. Dynamic load is something that is unforeseeable, or in this case it is wind, or it may be earthquakes, or it may be a hurricane. So these kinds of loads are what are called as dynamic loads. Due to these dynamic loads, the construction of these types of bridges needs to be more rigid than what a simple beam bridge is. So as you can see by the image, the supports are generally made up of steel, but this is like an early 70s bridge, that's why it's made up of steel. More modern bridges are generally made of concrete because concrete is much cheaper than steel. Uh, Now to explain a little bit more about the construction of the bridge, as you can see, these are two pipelines that go across the bridge. In between those two pipelines, there are 4 to 6 gauge galvanized steel rods that are compressed by something called an anchorage, that is used to anchor the two ends of the cables on either side of the bridge, and that's what is passing through those cables, and that's why you see the curvature or the structure of the bridge like this. Yeah, next slide. So in our project, this is what a suspension bridge looked like. The construction is pretty much the same as a simple beam bridge. On one side, we used 2 straws as supports, and on the other side, we used 2 straws as supports as well. If you look at it from a theory perspective, these two are what are called as reaction forces. They act upwards, and this is the beam bridge. And in our case, we used a 0.5 mm wire that you may be able to see goes from here to here. This is what it mimics the suspension bridge. And yeah, then we added a paper cup to the bridge, which acts as a weight, and then we started adding paper clips into it. Yeah, so this was the result of our suspension bridge. So we did 3 trials, each adding more and more weight or sometimes less, depending on how much weight each beam took to fail. So for our first trials, it failed at 80 clips. The second trial, it failed at 84, and the third, 85, giving us an average of 83 clips. Now, as Gaurav said, each clip weighed about 3.5 grams. So the average failure weight for this was around 290 grams. Next slide. So this is the video of our failure of the suspension bridge. As you can see, the beam is starting to buckle now. In bridge engineering, this is what is called as flexural failure. In this beam, the upper part goes under compression and the under part goes under tensile strength, and it fails. Next slide. So this is the comparison between the two. And our results, we got it as like this beam bridge, we got the average weight at around 140 grams, and the suspension bridge, we got it around 290 grams. So in our experiment, it pretty much was that the suspension bridge could take twice as much load, or a little more than twice as much load than the beam bridge could. To compare the two, we can see that the differences are pretty substantial when it comes to beam bridge and the suspension bridge. The first one is that the distance between the two supports are far greater. That's why something like a beam bridge is used where there is enough supports to be given, and on suspension bridge it is generally used to bridge a gap between two mountains, let's say. So where giving a lot of supports isn't beneficial or isn't possible. And in comparison to suspension bridge, even though it seems a little bit simpler than a beam bridge, the technical prowess that is required to build a suspension bridge is far greater than a beam bridge. Yeah, that's about the comparison we can talk about. Next. So after we have done the project, it is important to understand why we have done the project. So this project can be used as an example, like what we did, what we studied in our theory can be used as a practical experience. And we got to know the fundamentals behind civil engineering and bridge engineering. And this is the conclusion. From our project, from our readings, we can pretty much see that a suspension bridge can handle far greater weights or loads than a simple beam bridge. So that is it from our side. Thank you.
Time for questions. Who wants to read the question?
If you increase the length of the bridge, how do you think it will have any effect on your final result?
For our experiment or in practical terms?
Like in reality or in the experiment?
So
About your experiment.
So if we increase the load, can you see that?
Okay, so if we increase the length, but depends on like whether you're talking about the beam bridge or the suspension bridge, or for both of them.
All of them.
So basically, if we increase the length, let's say if we increase the length for the beam bridge, of course I think it would actually fail much more easier because there's more length. I'm not getting the right physics to explain it.
Yeah, no, he's right. If we increase the length, then the weight it takes will be far less than what a shorter length would be. So let's say like this was around 5 centimeters. If you increase it to like 7 centimeters, then what the simple beam bridge took was around 140. So in your case, it would probably take around 100 grams or something, and it will buckle.
From that, in the beam rate, in the form, the first time you tested it's 35 clips, but the last time is 45 clips. I think it's a big difference between the first time and
Yes, it is.
Why this happened?
The beam is pretty much a plastic straw, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the construction of the plastic straw. Like one plastic straw can have some more material, some more plastic in it than other straw can have. So sometimes the results is obviously going to vary, but like in our case it was 35 and 45.
Okay.
Did you try changing the position of the load and see whether the max weight will be changed?
So instead of putting it in the middle, we can like put it somewhere not close to the middle, like that.
They're basically, yeah, at different positions. No, we did not try that.
Okay, thank you.
You don't have a question for us? No, it's okay, we don't mind.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just remind you before I forget, you have an opening in 2010 to submit your PowerPoint. Use it to submit report as well. Put them both together, PowerPoint and the report.
I can.
The PowerPoint will be in PPTX and the report will be in Word document. So we'll have to upload 2 files. We won't be able to do that. We can convert both of those into PDF and then put it as PDF, if that's okay. Like convert the PowerPoint presentation into PDF and convert the Word document into PDF.
Yes, do that. Do that. Convert both files into PDF and upload as PDF.
One more group,
One more group, yes.
and then no need for it, right?
No need, but we are going to surpass 1 o'clock a little bit. We're gonna leave. What time is your class?
1.
1 o'clock. So we can fit in another one.
Yes, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, quick.